So we wind up posting these orientations on the file sharing OneHub site. That's why I'm recording it. I don't know whether anyone has ever actually gone to listen to one, but it'll be there if it's helpful. Hello, everyone. I'm Andy Paller. I am the director of the benchmarking project, a vice president at JCC Association, and absolutely thrilled to have all of you on this call and have a chance to work with you over the coming months on the 2023 cycle of the benchmarking program. We have 2 hours scheduled for this session. I will be shocked if we take anywhere near that amount of time. We haven't up to this point, but we have it if we need it. Having said that, please interrupt at any point with questions. Just because of background noise, it's helpful to keep yourself muted when you don't have questions. But at any point something doesn't make sense, or something raises a related question or an unrelated question, just unmute yourself and shout it out. The nature of presenting on Zoom means that once I do a screen share, I no longer can see all of you. So it's hard to know if you've raised a hand. Easier just to unmute and ask your question. So please do at any point. Let me share the presentation with you. And here's our agenda for today's call. As I think you all know, there's a part A and a part B to this in-depth orientation. Part A is going to begin with about 5 minutes of me talking generally about the benchmarking program. I know that there are JCCs new to benchmarking. There are JCC staff who are new, even though their JCC has been participating. And I think it's helpful for you to have a sense of what this is all about, and also where we end. So we'll actually, in that intro, talk a little bit about what happens in 2024 when we release your data, and what are our hopes for what you can do with those data. So that's items 1 and 2. We'll move in item 3. The OneHub file sharing site is the tool we use to share everything we want you to have goes on OneHub. And when you have materials for us, whether they're completed tools, email lists for the surveys, your logo, you'll upload that to OneHub as well. So we'll spend a little time walking through that, just to familiarize yourself with what it looks like. I have begun to add new JCC benchmarking coordinators to the OneHub site. If you haven't gotten an invite from me and you don't already have credentials from a previous round of benchmarking, just shoot me a quick email and I'll take care of that very quickly. And having said that, let me point you to the email address at the bottom of the page, because that is going to be your best, you'll get your quickest response by using the JCC benchmark at jcca.org email address. We'll talk about that later, but that's sort of our help desk for the benchmarking process. Anyway, just to finish the agenda, there are 6 data tools, and we're going to cover 4 today. 4 surveys: the member survey, staff survey, board practices survey, and board member survey. We'll talk about each of those, make sure you know the dates of them and what we need and what you need to be most successful. And then we'll end just with a recap. We'll review the calendar, and of course, give you one more chance to ask questions. So with that, let me jump into my quick introduction. The benchmarking program began in 2005. So we've been doing this a long time. And the goal of the program is to help shift JCCs from sort of gut anecdotal decision-making to using data in a more rigorous way to make decisions. And through benchmarking, we've been able to identify probably a couple dozen drivers of excellence, key performance indicators, where there's a strong statistical correlation between desired outcomes, engaged user population, staff that are happy and sticking around, strong financial results, Jewish impact with our participants, and board governance. What are the things that we see across the continent, US and Canada, big JCCs, small JCCs, West Coast JCCs, East Coast JCCs, year after year? What are the drivers of success? So we're able to identify that through benchmarking. And then you see in the middle the three kinds of data that come out of benchmarking. The first is a look at the JCC movement. What does the data look like for the JCC field? And how is that changing over time? The second, you have the ability through benchmarking to compare your JCC's results either to a group of similarly sized JCCs, what we call our standard peer groups, or you can create your own peer group. You can decide that there are 3 JCCs that are most like you for one reason or another. They're in your neighborhood, they have similar operating structures, similar age, whatever the reasons, you can form your own peer group to decide who's going to be the best comparison group. And it might be different in different areas. You might have a peer group for looking at camp issues, but you might have a different group when you're looking at membership or fitness. And then the last tool, and probably what JCCs tell me is the most useful, is the ability to compare your results over time. So we at this point, we have put onto our online dashboards all the data back to 2012. So any years that you've participated in the past, going back to 2012, you can compare to your 2023 results. At least as important, if not more important, we hope you'll all be participating in 2025, 2 years from now, and you'll be able to use benchmarking to show and identify the areas where your performance has improved, areas where it stayed flat, maybe good, but stayed the same, and to identify any areas of slippage that you may want to pay attention to. That's the broad goals of the benchmarking program. And as I mentioned quickly, we've identified 5, there are 5 pillars to our JCC Excellence Definition Foundation. And we collect data in all 5 areas, and we look for those strong correlations so that we can help you narrow in on a smaller number of high impact activities. So in benchmarking, we'll be talking about Jewish impact, about high quality programs that are perceived and highly rated by your users, and strong user engagement with users. Staff, hugely important driver of this. So what are the factors that result in a strong culture and strong satisfaction, and therefore your ability to attract and retain the best staff? Financial sustainability and growth, the ingredients that we need to be able to do anything as a JCC. And our newest area is governance. So we'll look at how your board is structured, and we'll survey your board and get their feedback on that board experience and how they perceive the effectiveness of the JCC's board of directors. So that's our definition of excellence. Next important thing for you to know is that in 2013, we shifted this from an annual process to a 2-year process. We really did that to relieve stress on the part of JCCs. What we were hearing from the field was, we collect data in the fall, we release it in the spring, JCC starts to take some actions, which is what we want them to do, and suddenly we're collecting more data, just too fast, and it takes a lot of time and effort. So we now talk about A years and B years. 2023 is an A year. It's the most intensive data collection. It's when we do our survey work. It's when we follow up with on-site consultation, which is a huge benefit to JCCs, bringing a member of our benchmarking faculty to your community to spend a day and a half with your staff leadership, different staff groups, to meet with the board, to look at your results and begin doing some planning. That's the A year. The B year is really focused on you implementing the changes that you've identified, you building on the opportunities you saw in your A year data. We collect just a teeny bit of data in the fall of a B year. So next fall, we'll collect a little bit of program and financial data. We won't do any surveys. We'll largely leave you alone unless you reach out for help in any of the areas you're working on. So that's in broad brush, the 2-year structure of benchmarking. This next slide is the detail, the nitty gritty. And so this is a good reference for you moving forward. And if you want to be able to explain to other members of the staff or your lay leadership how this benchmarking works and what's an A year and a B year, what does that mean? How does that change the work that the JCC is doing or the work that JCC Association is doing? This is the slide to pull out. And by the way, this presentation, if I didn't say it already, is already on the OneHub site. So no need to try to take copious notes as we're going through it. Just note things that you think are particularly important. And we've got the slide numbers on the slide, so you can say, oh yeah, that slide 6 was talking about something. I want to print out a copy of it, or whatever the issue is. We're going to go through all this over the course, all of the A year stuff during the course of this call. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time. I just wanted you to know that this is there as a resource and reference for you. Here are the 6 benchmarking data collection tools. And as I mentioned, we'll talk about 1 through 4 on this call. And then part B, we'll look at 5 and 6, 2 Excel workbooks where we collect lots of data about membership and program statistics in major programs, and income and expenses and building square footage and how administrative staff spend their time. That's part B. We're only gonna briefly refer to it, and this may be that brief reference. So stay tuned for those other tools. But we'll go through each of these 4 survey tools today. This slide has been in the orientation for many years. I've discovered that all of these points are easier to talk about and easier to digest in the context of the tools. So I'm gonna plow through this slide, and we will cover each of those items as we go through each of the tools. And here's me jumping ahead 4 months. It's February, it's March, it's April 2024. We've released the data. You've seen your results. What we hope each of the 50 JCCs in benchmarking will be doing is looking for 3 to 5 priority action items. What are the biggest opportunities facing your JCC based on the benchmarking data? So those may be areas where you're doing great and you just want to build on that momentum and that success and the good reputation you developed. There may be an area where you're really unhappy with the results and you see that you need to do some work to build up those numbers in a different area. And we say 3 to 5 because we know you guys are all incredibly busy and unlikely to be able to tackle another dozen items. In fact, I'd lean closer to 3 than to 5. But if you can identify those small number of things and develop a strategy, make assignments to make sure you're paying attention to those over the following 15 months or so, we've seen in JCC after JCC great results. You really can move the bar through that effort. In terms of what you should be expecting from us, from JCC Association and the benchmarking team, in addition to a prompt response to any questions that you send by phone or using that email address, this is what we'll be sharing with each of the benchmarking JCCs. First, after the user survey and the board member survey ends, we'll be sending you a summary report for each of those surveys. It'll cover all the multiple choice questions, and you'll see that 30% of your users agreed, and 20% strongly agreed, and 15% strongly disagreed with this question and this issue and this issue. So those data will be coming to you late October, early November, along with all of the comments. The open-ended comments from those two surveys. That's the first deliverable from us. For those JCCs that are participating in the leading edge survey this October, and I'll talk more about who you are. It's required for some of the benchmarking JCCs. It's optional for others. So we'll cover that later in the presentation. But if you're participating in that, your next deliverable will be access to those results. And Leading Edge will be putting the October data on their online dashboards. So you'll be able to review those results again by early November. The biggest deliverable is the availability of key benchmarking drivers on our online dynamic dashboards. And we have put together a project plan that should get that data released quite early, a couple months earlier than in past years. So by late December, early January at the very latest, you'll be able to go on that dashboard, see your results, compare those results to other JCCs, and actually drill down and dig into the data. The last two important deliverables will produce a short data overview, just it's like 5 or 6 pages of the most important metrics in each of the excellence areas. So that will come to each JCC, and of course that on-site consultation. Those consultations are optional. You don't have to have one of us come on board and spend time with your people. But it's number one, it's free. There's no charge to the JCC, and I think it's a huge added value that JCCs have found to be very useful, to have an independent person who's familiar with the benchmarking process, familiar with your data, and familiar with data of other JCCs to be able to help guide you through digesting your results. So that's where we are in terms of deliverables. And the last piece of introduction is I just wanted to give you a little bit of a peek at those online benchmarking dashboards. So I'm going to do this very quickly, but we developed these dashboards in response to requests from the field. We used to produce this 80-90 page PowerPoint deck, and there was a lot of information packed into that report, but it was static. It didn't give you any ability to dig into the data, to look at, are there differences between members and program participants? What about our newer members versus our longer term members? How about young people, or people who are in the preschool program, or people who are fitness users? The same thing on the staff side. Are there differences across departments, or for newer staff or older staff? So the dashboards allows you to do those drill downs. And look at your data in as detailed a fashion as you want to. This is the main page of the dashboard. It's organized with these pages on the left. You'll recognize them from our definition of excellence because we mirror that. Your JCC will pop up. So I logged in as a Cincinnati staff person. You can pick one or more peer groups. You can pick one or more years of data to look at. And then you start drilling through and you see pages like this that show your results compared to whatever peer group you picked for the series of years you've identified. This happens to be a slide around fundraising that combines data provided by the JCC about how many dollars you raised. Those are the two top charts. And the two charts on the bottom provide data from the user survey. The people who said that they made a contribution to the JCC, the people who said they'd be willing to give to the JCC in the future. And again, you can drill down. You can say, who are those people? Are they our longtime members and supporters? How are we doing with newer people, more newly engaged folks? This slide is here just to give you a peek at how you would filter. So we're on a user survey page, which means we can turn on or off any of these age groups, Jewish or non-Jewish, members versus participants. There are another 3 or 4 different filters that you can apply if it's relevant. The dashboard's designed so you can click on a peer group bar and see who are the best JCCs in that year, in that metric you're looking at. So this happens to be the percentage of special needs users who said that program quality was truly outstanding. And the top 5 JCCs were Indianapolis, Greater Washington, the Bender JCC, the 2 Palm Beach JCC branches, and Charlotte. So just another piece of functionality. We want you to be able to learn from each other. And so if you're struggling in an area, this can help identify JCCs who may be able to help you with that. Here's another page from this is from staff. There are probably a dozen different staff metrics that we have found to be important drivers. And for the first time this year, we're able to use the leading edge employee experience survey data in benchmarking. So we will have access to those data. We'll be able to use them in our analysis. We'll be able to include them in our reporting on the dashboard, rather than like past years where we did our own separate staff survey. This year, we will not be able to do. We will not have to do that, and most JCCs will not have to take a second staff survey this year. So we think that's a big step forward as well. And the final slide on the dashboard, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of this year's benchmarking process, are just these heat maps. So you click on a metric, and up pop a chart that looks like this. So it's showing this is future work intentions. So how does that vary by department? How does it vary comparing full-time staff to part-time staff, different reporting levels within the organization, newer staff versus more tenured staff? Again, just a quick way to dig into your data and see what's driving strong results or what may be contributing to weaker results. So that's just a sneak peek to whet your appetite for getting to January. Here's the 50 JCCs in benchmarking this year. It's one of the largest numbers of participants we've ever had in the 17, 18 years of the program. It includes 4 JCCs participating for the very first time in benchmarking. So East Bay, Montreal, the Virginia Peninsula JCC in Newport News, and the Mid-Island Y in Plainville, New York, all participating in benchmarking for the first time. But a great group of JCCs. quite varied, covering the US and Canada. And we are absolutely thrilled to have this strong group of JCCs. And we sort of thank you in advance, you and your leadership, for volunteering, for saying, yes, this is something that we think has value for our JCC. And we're therefore willing to put the time and effort into participating in the benchmarking program. Garbage in, garbage out, with very, very, very few exceptions, and I will identify them when we get to them. We don't want you guessing. If you bump into a question on the data forms that we ask you to complete where you simply don't have the data, we want you to leave those blank. We don't want guesses in almost all cases. We rely on these data for understanding what's happening in the field. You're going to rely on these data for comparing your results to other JCCs and your results over time. So guesses just muddy that up. So in general, if you don't have the answer, leave a question blank. If you're not sure how to handle a certain situation, then reach out and we'll be glad to talk through individual situations. But that's my segue to OneHub. OneHub is a secure portal that we use for file sharing. As I said earlier, all the things you need to get from us, you can find on OneHub. You'll find the blank forms. You'll find templates for emails. You'll find the calendar. You'll find copies of these orientations. You'll find copies of the surveys. All of that is available to you on the OneHub site. And each JCC in benchmarking has its own secure folder, so that when you upload data for us, as long as you're in your folder, and that's why it's in red in the middle of the slide, as long as you've clicked into the Cleveland folder or the Denver folder, then your data is not visible or accessible by any other JCC, only by your staff and by the national benchmarking team. So there's the URL for the OneHub site on the bottom of the page. As I said, I've been adding new people, but if I've missed you, or if you didn't receive your email, there was one JCC where their spam blockers were blocking the invites. Do reach out to let me know, and I will make sure you get an invitation. If you already had access to OneHub, that still exists. Your username is always going to be your work email address, and your password is whatever you selected. And if you can't remember what it was, 2 years ago or 6 years ago, you can always reset your password. And you can see here's the login page. And once you log in, you'll see a screen that looks like this. And all of our work is in the workspace called JCC Excellence, the benchmarking project. As you can see on this slide, there are a number of different tabs. So you navigate through the OneHub site by clicking on different tabs, different pages. You probably will have no need to go to FAQs and discussion. There's not a lot of information there. We have not updated those in 2023, but you'll spend a lot of time on the first 4 slides, the first 4 tabs, and we'll look at each of them right now, beginning with the Welcome tab. So what you see on the Welcome tab is a condensed list of the next 12 things we need from you or you'll be getting from us. This is walking through today through the end of October, step by step. It's a reminder of the things we need. It's a reminder of the deadlines for various pieces of data. I know not easy to read on a screen, and we'll cover them in more detail as we go through the presentation, but I think it's a good reference. So that's why I created that. It's worth, periodically jumping into the welcome tab of One Hub and saying, okay, we did 1, we did 2, oh, we better be working on 3 and 4 because those deadlines are coming up. So that's the
Come on,
welcome.
camera.
Second tab, labeled contact info and survey dates. We have already asked for this first piece. We sent an email and a survey link to all of the benchmarking JCC executive directors about 2 weeks ago, asking them to fill out a short survey that tells us who the members of the benchmarking team are, and how to contact them, email address, phone numbers. We've asked them to let us know if there are any off-site early childhood locations that we should reference in our user survey, so that we can ask preschool parents, which of these locations do you use most often? And it asks for preferences about when that member user survey will take place for your JCC. We'll get to that in details, but we create 9 different 2-week blocks of time, overlapping 2-week blocks, starting in early October and ending in mid-November, to spread out the work, and to try to be responsive to JCC that may want an earlier date or a later date, or they're trying to avoid a big community event. So that survey asked for your JCC's first choice and second choice. I've started following up with the JCCs that haven't submitted that yet, but I've also put the link here on this tab. The second link we haven't announced yet. I mentioned that JCCs will have the opportunity to participate in the leading edge staff survey, which will be in October. And this very short survey simply says, are you interested in participating in that survey? If yes, which staff should be receiving response rates reports? Who's going to be monitoring how effective your recruitment efforts are? How many of your staff have the survey? And when the survey is done, who should have access to the data? So quick survey. Rebecca, I'm gonna mute you just so people can focus. Anyway, so that survey's there. We'll send out an email reminding you to take a look at this and letting us know if you're interested. We're asking that by September 13th. So over the next 2 weeks, your JCC makes a decision on whether you want to participate in the benchmarking survey, in the leading edge staff survey. The third tab, which is labeled Forms Library, is where you'll go for everything you need from us. So you can see we're on the home page of the Forms Library. So PDFs of the surveys are there if you want to review the questions we're asking or share them with others. The survey flyers that we produce, these are actually the 2021 flyers at this point, but we'll be updating them. These orientation presentations are loaded on the One Hub under orientation materials. I'm quickly looking at my JCCs. I don't think there's anyone on the call today who will need to worry about multi-site materials. There are less than a handful of JCCs who have what we defined in benchmarking by full service fitness facilities, who have more than one location. So many more JCCs have multiple preschools or an offsite camp or an offsite program of some sort, but relatively few. Pittsburgh, Palm Beach, St. Louis, Baltimore have full multiple sites in 2 locations. So if you don't, you can ignore the folder called Extras for Multi-Sites. but the data collection tools we need you to complete, we need every JCC to complete, are here in the data collection tools folder. And the way you're navigating in any of these tabs is you would just click on the folder to go down a level. And then you would click back here on home under the upload button to go back up a level to the home page for whatever tab you're on. So Forms Library, where you'll go to get things from us. There'll be links to the benchmark orientations as well, a reminder of the deadline for the 2 Excel workbooks. That's Forms Library. The last tab of OneHub we'll look at is the JCC Files tab. We've clicked into it. It looks scary because as an administrator, I have access to all of the JCC folders. But when you click into the JCC Files tab, you should only see your folder, just a single folder there with your JCC's name on it. As I mentioned earlier, before you start uploading materials, you need to click on your folder, and then you're in the secure area that only your staff and the national team see. Before I show you that page, I just want you to see that there's a lot of information on this page, how to name your files. So you're going to download a file that's called 2023 Participation Tool. We're going to get back 53 participation tools. We need to know that it's the it's the Kaiserman JCC's participation tool, or the Steinberg Loop JCC's participation tool. So we want to carefully start with your name and then make it clear what tool you've uploaded. The other reason that's important is if you've recently participated in benchmarking, you'll see your files from the last couple of years in your folder. We've left them there for reference for your use. And so we don't want to confuse the 2021 emails with the 2023 emails. And lastly, before I go to the next page, you see on the bottom that you can preview the surveys. If you actually want to go through the experience of completing any of these surveys, you could do that using these links. The board member survey, the board practices survey are up and ready. The 2021 survey is just an inch away from being done, and we'll load that as soon as it gets finalized. But now we've clicked into the Austin folder, and you can see that there are a series of things here. So these are the logos they uploaded. Here's their participation tool from 2021. Their B-year participation tool from 2022. Their financial accounting tool. Membership structure. So we're going to be looking for all those things from you. If you've participated recently, you'll see your old files. As I mentioned to Matthew before the call started, if you are looking for files from previous years and you can't find them, that staff person left. Don't know where on the network those files were saved. Just reach out. Glad to share those, and that they may be helpful to you as a starting point for your reporting in 2023. And lastly, just because it is confusing, this is actually the file directory here, circled in orange. So we are in the Austin subfolder, and if we want to go up a level, we simply click on where it says home, and it pulls us up a level. Any questions about OneHub before we start looking at the member user participant survey? Okay, I'm going to keep going. As I mentioned, this is the one tool that we are still finalizing, but it will be there this week. I'm quite certain. I'm just waiting for one more sign off before I post it. But the user survey is sent out through a platform called Alchemer. Used to be called Survey Gizmo. It is a powerful survey tool that gives us all the functionality we need to branch and use logics and skip models in developing our surveys, and provides a high level of data security as well. Your folks will be receiving email invitations from Alchemer. They'll have the ability actually to complete the survey on any device they want to. So you can do it on a desktop, you can do it on a laptop. They've even optimized it so that you can do it on your cell phone. That's what that picture is showing. It can be a little bit clunky on a cell phone because you get one question at a time. But if that's what your folks are most comfortable doing, they can in fact do that on their cell phone as well. The surveys, by the way, if you get a question, will come from this. This is what the email will say, from jccsurvey@jcca.org. As I mentioned, that first request is asking when you would like your survey to run. The range of dates begin October 3rd. So we wanted to largely get through the Jewish holidays before we did this. The last window closes on November 14th. So there's not a huge range of space. But from the JCCs that have responded so far, it's very clear that there are strong preferences and they're quite different. So the JCCs that want an early date will be able to have an early date. Those who prefer a later date, I believe, will be able to do that as well. But please get those preferences in this week. If you're not sure whether they've been submitted, you can check with me. I'm glad to let you know. There are primarily 4 tasks for each JCC around the member user survey. The first task is to submit an email list, an Excel file of emails to us at least 2 weeks before your survey launches. We don't need names. We don't need any details. You'll see that we want you to include members, non-members who use your programs, but we don't need you to identify those different groups. Just an Excel file, 1 column of email addresses. That's all we need. Helpful if you can do some hygiene before you submit that list. But we need the email list so that we can send out these surveys. The second thing, and this is optional, but we've developed a template for the email invitation that tells your people that this is a survey from the Mandel JCC as part of an effort to improve performance, to gather feedback on whether we're doing a good job and where we can do a better job, signed by the president and director of the JCC. But if you want to customize that email letter, we can easily do that. And so we've provided a template, standard invite on OneHub. And if you wanted to customize it, you should feel free to do so. You'd make your changes, you'd upload it into your folder, and then we would make those changes when we create the custom survey for your JCC. So emails in an Excel file, custom invite language if you want to. The biggest job, and frankly, the most important job, is encouraging your folks to take the survey. So this really is an entire campaign. Surveys coming. Please complete the survey. Information on your website, use of social media, signage in the building, emails that come from different departments. So the camp director reaches out to parents of campers, and the preschool director puts flyers into the kids' knapsacks. Announcements at Group X classes that this survey is going on. We really want to hear from as many people as we can. Most important thing that you'll have to worry about with the user survey, and it makes a huge difference In the last round, the average response rate was 15% on the user survey. 15% of respondents completed the survey, but it ranged from a low of just 2% to a high of 71%. Part of the difference is who you included in your list, and we really want you to go well beyond members. The folks who have had interactions with your JCC over the past year, this is a chance to see how they're feeling, see what they're thinking. But the other difference is about local efforts to encourage participation. So that's the third thing that we're looking for. The last thing, also optional, but I'd strongly encourage you to think about it, is each JCC can add 3 to 5 custom questions at the end of the user survey. So if there are issues that have been percolating up at your JCC where you'd like to test the waters and get some feedback, you can submit those questions. I will work with you on the wording of them so that they're, that they collect the data you're looking for. JCCs have used this around potential capital projects. They've used it around fundraising. They've used it to look at programmatic interests. The options are without limit, and they could be as specific and narrow or as broad as you think could be useful. So please give some thought to that as well. I probably covered a lot of this, but let me just mention a couple of things. If you have, and many JCCs have a group of people who've said, stop sending me emails. I don't want to get emails from the JCC. Don't include those emails. Be sure you pull them out, because we don't want to aggravate any of your people through this survey. But we are eager to have as broad a group as possible of members and program participants. If you have multiple email addresses for adults in a household, you should share all of those, because one person may be a fitness user while another one is into arts and culture, so they have very different experiences, and we think their respective input is helpful. Not kids though. We don't want to hear from 10-year-olds on whether they thought the lunches at camp were any good. You've got a little time to collect additional emails. So if there are programs coming up, or you can put out a table in the lobby somewhere to begin to collect additional email addresses, we encourage you to do that. We'll be sharing with you a poster you could put up. We'll give you a link that you can put on your website. So we'll have some marketing suggestions for you as well. But that as I said, it's a mini campaign. So begin thinking about what you and your colleagues can do, from now through the survey to get the greatest number of people to participate. We will be sending you reports during when your survey is open. They'll show you that you sent out 1,526 invites, and 300 have come back. So you'll see how you're doing, and know whether you need to ratchet up your efforts, or in fact just sort of ride it to the finish line because you're doing great. That's the user survey process. The last sort of input. This is the template for our email invitation. So this is without the big boxes. That's typically how it looks. That's the language we found has been successful. But again, if you want to make changes, we're glad to do that with you. Everything you see that's red are things that we will update. So we will update the name of your JCC and the date your survey closes, and the name and title of your president and executive director. That you don't have to worry about. But if there's language changes you want to make, Or if, and in the middle of the page, it says, if you participate, you can be eligible for a drawing for a something provided by the JCC. That's an option that we started encouraging 3 or 4 years ago. So the JCC Association will award a small number of Visa gift cards as an incentive, just to encourage participation. If a JCC wants to provide its own additional incentive, you include that here in the invite, so your people have just one more reason to go ahead and click on the link and complete the survey. So this is in one hub as well, ready for you to download, review, and if you want to customize, you can do so. For just sort of context, the 2023 survey is largely similar to previous years, because we want to be able to provide you with longitudinal data over time. We try to minimize the number of changes we make each year, but we did make 2 big kinds of changes this year. We stripped out of the survey all of the references to the pandemic, which we needed in 2021. It impacted a number of questions in a number of areas, so we put them in 21. We took them out in 2023. And the other thing that we're excited about is we spent a couple months thinking about the questions we ask in the area of Jewish impact and JCC activities that we think contribute to Jewish impact. We've consulted with some of your colleagues in the field, and we've made some changes in those questions, revising language and adding a couple questions that we think will help us generate some new insights around Jewish impact. Other than that, the survey, by and large, similar to previous years. And the last, second to last slide, just to give you a sense of the kinds of drivers that we have found with benchmarking. Net promoter is a metric you'll see in a few different places in benchmarking. How likely are you to recommend the JCC? One of the really interesting and very powerful metrics we discovered early in the program is this frequency of informal conversations with JCC staff. We ask survey participants on what percentage of your visit to the JCC do you have a conversation with a staff person that's more than hello. It is incredibly powerful. It correlates with user satisfaction, it correlates with Jewish impact, correlates with giving, making a financial gift to the JCC. And guess what? It's really hard. The numbers are much lower than you would expect. And we've seen in JCC after JCC that when they work on it, they do training, they encourage their staff to have those conversations, they make sure they're wearing name tags so that users know they are a staff person. Those numbers bump up. If a JCC ignores this metric, the numbers tend to drop down. The pandemic created a huge challenge because we didn't want people sticking around. We want people, quickly getting to their class and leaving quickly the other direction, staying away from the plexiglass windows that kept us separated. We're all rebuilding from that experience. So those are just some of the things that you'll see when we get to the data in early 2024. And lastly, just to remind you, JCC will typically get pages and pages of comments, nice comments and critical comments. Some of them will be one-offs. You'll read something and you'll say, this is, someone had a bad day and a bad experience. I'm not worried about that. But you'll also see certain kinds of comments that tend to repeat. And that's what you're really looking for in this. Are there a bunch of people either praising or criticizing some aspect of the JCC operations? So that's our first tool. It's the one we're going to spend the most time on. So don't panic and look at the clock and figure out how we're possibly going to get done with this. That's the user survey. We will wind up sending somewhere in the neighborhood of 250,000 survey invitations. So 10% response rate. So we're going to have 20,000 JCC users. Let us know how they're feeling about their experience. It's a tremendous data source for the field and for your JCC. So that's why we spend a little more time on the user survey. Any questions on that before I plow ahead to the last three tools? Okay. Staff engagement survey tool. As I mentioned, for the first time, the leading edge employee experience survey will be our staff survey tool for benchmarking. We've worked, I would say, a year and a half with leading edge to make sure that we're asking the right questions, because there were some questions that we found to be important that weren't part of that leading edge survey, that will have access to the data that will allow us to integrate that with our other benchmarking data. But we knew when we started planning that there would be some JCCs that missed the April 2023 leading edge survey, and we didn't want to have to turn them away from benchmarking. So leading edge agreed that any JCC that didn't take the survey in April can take it now, and we'll be offering it to all of those JCCs. We'll actually be requiring it of all those JCCs. Since we were already doing that, when we got the results in May, and JCC Association is part of the post-survey consultation process, we saw that there were, I don't remember the number, but a significant amount of JCCs whose response rates were really low. The average response rate on the benchmarking staff survey is around 45 to 50% response rate. So much higher than for the user survey. But we had JCCs that had 10% response rates and 15% and 20% response rates on the leading edge survey. And so we asked leading edge whether JCCs who had low response rates in April and who are committed to doing whatever they can to increase that, whether they could take the survey again. And leading edge said that's fine. So in October, we will offer the leading edge survey, same questions as in April, to any JCC that didn't take it, or any JCC that had a low response rate and wants to try to do better. October 10th through the 25th is when that survey will be out. Just a couple of things to remember if you decide to participate. We want full and part-time staff, but our recommendation is only staff who work at least 10 hours a week, and only staff who work throughout the year. So not a camp counselor or a seasonal lifeguard, not someone who comes in and teaches a class once a week for an hour, or has a shift as a lifeguard for a couple hours. Those folks, number one, aren't going to know enough about the JCC as an employer to be able to respond to our questions. And frankly, they're not likely to bother anyway. So focus on year-round staff working at least 10 hours a week. Like with the user survey, your efforts to encourage staff to take the survey make a huge difference. So it's top down, right? We want the CEO saying, we're taking the survey again, really, really important. But we want the department heads giving the same message to their folks. We want people to be hearing it in multiple ways from multiple people, so that they take the 10 minutes to fill out the survey for you. And particularly with the staff survey, really important to emphasize to them that it is confidential, it is anonymous. JCC Association takes a number of steps, and Leading Edge takes a number of additional steps to make sure that no individual response is ever identifiable. So you should reassure your staff about that. If your staff also are members of the JCC, please encourage them to take both surveys. I think a JCC staff person may have particularly good insights about things that are happening at the JCC that are working well or working less well. This slide gives you the dates around the leading edge survey. As I mentioned earlier, we want you to let us know by September 13th if you're interested. And by September 28th, we'll need you to have uploaded your HRIS, the data form that Leading Edge uses for its survey. It includes a first name, email address, birth date, start date, and the name of your JCC. That's all required. But it also has a number of fields that you can customize. And we have found JCCs have been very thoughtful and strategic in using those customizable fields to generate some additional insights, whether it's structured by teams or who's hybrid or who's not, or who who's reporting to different managers, as long as those groups are big enough. Part of the confidentiality issue, is that if there's less than 4 responses in a bucket, Leading Edge won't show you the data. So if you've got a manager who has 4 reports and one person doesn't complete the survey, you won't see any data for that manager. So sometimes you need to group together different groups to do that. Anyway, the HRIS is due by September 28th. We're going to do an info session for anyone who's interested, and we'll be able to share suggestions on the HRIS. There's also lots of information and guidance. Is a link to the Leading Edge site. They have tips and videos around the HRIS. They have sample emails to send to your staff. Lots of helpful information on their site. As I mentioned, October 10th through the 25th is the dates for that survey. And Leading Edge has said by November 8th, you'll be able to see your results. So really quick. So that's, yeah. Is
that a different survey than the normal staff survey? I guess I'm a little confused by that.
If you took the I don't think your JCC did. In August, there were 82 JCCs that completed the Leading Edge survey. It's a very comprehensive survey covering everything from salaries and benefits to safety and department and manager, all things that contribute to culture. It's the same survey, but because Kansas City didn't take it in April,
gotcha.
We'll want you to take it in October.
Okay, because I know benchmarking in general has a staffing survey, but this is a little different.
So this replaces that staff survey.
Gotcha. That's what I missed. Somehow I missed that. Thank you very much.
Right. So that's the staff survey. My guess is we'll have maybe a third of the JCCs will take the survey in October, and this is just some of the things we've identified as drivers, as key performance indicators from the past years of benchmarking. Executive director vision, the ability to learn and grow, professional development opportunities, communication is huge and really hard at JCCs because there's so many departments and people are spread in different parts of the physical plant and they have different hours, so lots of factors, but also lots of insights for how to improve staff satisfaction. So that's tool number 2. The last 2 tools we're going to cover today are the governance tools, and we call them the board practices survey and the board member survey. Starting with board practices, this is a tool that's completed by the JCC. It is a series of operational questions about how your board is structured and how it operates, and the way you'll access the board practices survey is that we will email a survey link to your executive director, and all of those links will go out on September 26th. And the deadline for completing that board practices survey is September 22. So the whole field, all 50 JCCs will be completing that tool at the same time, and that's our earliest deadline for the benchmarking data collection. Number two, the board member survey is a quite different survey that asks board members about their experience on the board, the composition of their board members, how effective meetings are, whether the board is focusing on the right issues, what their onboarding process was like. The board member survey goes out a little later, so it will be sent to board members September 27th, and they'll have until October 13th to complete that survey. PDFs of both surveys are available on OneHub, as well as links to both of those surveys. They are not customizable. The emails are not customizable because we're going to send the exact same thing to every JCC and to every JCC board member. Those are the dates to remember. And I'll go through the two forms. There's just a little bit of prep around these tools. But there also are two definitions that we want JCCs to keep in mind for the governance tools. The first is, it sounds silly, but who's a board member? In developing these tools, we realize that many JCCs have large numbers of life board members, honorary board members who don't attend meetings, who therefore aren't going to be able to give you helpful input on how the board's operating. So for the purposes of benchmarking and for these two governance tools, please only include board members who have a vote, who are not honorary, and who are either elected or appointed. So in most cases, it'll be a smaller group of your most active board members that you will include when you complete, that you'll think of when you complete the board practices survey, which asks about attendance and turnover and giving to the JCC, just for those board members using the benchmarking definition. And when you send us an email list for the board member survey, again, just emails for those board members that we've just defined. So that's—
So Andy,
yeah.
This I just wanted to confirm this needs to be done by October 13th. This board survey, is that what I remember seeing on your other slide?
Yeah, the deadlines. The board members need to have finished completing the survey by the 13th.
We update our board October 1st. So would we? Is this the look back board or a new board?
The survey will go out in September, the last week of September. So I would say the board who's been operating for the past year is the board
Thank you.
to get this.
Andy, if we have a little bit of a unique structure where we have one board for the main JCC and then we actually have another board for our Mizell Arts and Culture Center, is there a way to delineate like two groups in the board at all, or are we just looking at the main kind of board for the JCC?
My guess and my suggestion, without knowing any of the details, is that you're going to want to just send it to the main board. But my suggestion would be take a look at the survey questions. And I think you'll see that they're just bunches of things that don't relate well to the narrower arts and culture board. But there was at least one JCC in 21 who had the same situation and decided they wanted to include everyone. So it certainly it's totally up to you who to include, but they'll all get mixed together. So it's not like we'll have two separate boards and one board can look at their results and the other board separate results. We'll have mixed results, and it'll be hard to identify whether it's the main board or the supplementary board. Interesting question, though.
Awesome. Thank you.
The only other definition that's important is board year. So Tammy was just saying October 1st is when their new board starts. We recognize that boards, the JCCs have different calendars, and so all we're asking you to do is to identify your board year based on that point where the new board members start. So they might start at the beginning of the fiscal year. They might start right after the annual meeting. They might start on January 1st. Whatever that start date is, that's how you should define your board year when you complete the board practices survey. And we're going to ask for data about the most recently completed board year. So don't automatically jump to the calendar year or to a fiscal year. Base it on when board members turn over. Board practices survey, here are those dates again. The one additional suggestion that we have is that because this survey needs to be completed in one sitting, the other surveys, because they're longer, a user can fill out the first 10 questions, then come back and finish the survey. That's not true with the board practices survey. So we would encourage you to download the PDF of the survey, give it to whoever's going to be completing this part of the benchmarking data collection, so they can look up the answers they need to look up before they go online to complete the online survey. There are things like calculating the average attendance at board meetings during the last board year. You can do that on the fly, but it would be easier to already have that done before you start completing that survey. Board practices survey, September 6th through the 22nd. And this is just a peek at the kinds of questions we're asking. Has the board approved a strategic plan in the last 3 years? Did they receive at least quarterly financial statements? Do they have term limits? Has the next board chair been identified? Series of questions about internally how you manage your board of directors. We look at turnover, we look, as I mentioned, at attendance, we look at giving from, again, the non-honorary voting board members. So that's the board practices survey. The board member survey, they're the dates again. We'll be sending it to your board members on the 27th, and they will have to the 13th to complete it. And as I mentioned, it's not customizable, so every board member across the continent will complete the same survey. The two things that I would emphasize are in number 5. So first of all, your board members, I assume in most cases, will receive the user survey as well as the board member survey, and that can be confusing. So we've gotten feedback saying, oh, I already completed the survey. Well, you completed the other survey. This is different. Important to let your board members know that they're going to receive 2 different surveys, that the surveys are completely different, asking very different questions, and so they should complete both surveys because we need them to. Related to that, I mentioned that the average response rate from the user survey, 10 to 15%, from the staff survey, 45 to 50%. For the board member survey, these are your most committed leaders. We think that anything less than 80% is unsatisfactory for the board member survey. So we want you to push for 100%. We think the cutoff is 80%. The average last round was 88%, and 15 JCCs actually did have 100% board member participation. Having said that, it doesn't come without effort. And this is the one part of benchmarking where we will actually send to each JCC a list. We'll say that these are the 4 board email addresses that haven't completed the survey yet, so that you or your president or your exec can reach out to those 4 people saying, you know, we're really trying to get everyone to complete the survey. And we heard from JCC Association that yours hasn't come in yet. Please complete the survey. So we'll give you that information, and we really want you to push as hard as you can with your board. And JCCs, for the most part, have been successful as a result. And just to end the board practices and to end the tool part of it, and then I have literally a handful of slides after this. Here are some of the things we look at with the board member survey. Engagement, involvement in strategies, clarity about board roles and responsibilities, meetings that are productive, series of questions. It's not a long survey. It's based on other governance research that's been available, and we think can be very helpful to you, and engaging with and thinking together with your board about how it can be even more effective moving forward. So quick pause before I do my wrap up slides. Questions on the board practices or the board member survey? Those will be pretty intuitive. Okay. So last couple slides. If there were one thing I could emphasize today, it would be to get started early. We think that with the training that you're getting through these orientations, with the deadlines that we've set, the JCCs have plenty of time to complete the tools to be successful in benchmarking. But the difference between starting early and waiting to the last second is a lot of extra stress. So I'd encourage all of you to at least download the tools, begin to think about, okay, who's going to have to fill out this part, and where am I going to get this piece of data, and let marketing know about the user survey so they can start doing their prep for it. Getting starting early will pay off over and over throughout the next couple months. I don't think there's anything else here that's critical. Don't be scared by the $1,500 penalty, because it's never been levied. I probably should just drop it out. But the reality is we will be as flexible as we can around deadlines, and we'll be absolutely as helpful as we can in making sure that you're able to complete the tools as they needed to be completed. But it's there, frankly, because there are certain points in the benchmarking project where we are on hold. We can't start our data analysis until all of the participation tools and all the financial accounting tools have been submitted and validated. So if there's 3 JCCs that haven't met the deadline, the rest of the field is waiting for them to finish before we can even start our analysis. So those tool deadlines wind up becoming critical, especially the later ones in the process. We've created in the end of this deck a one-page calendar. It includes the biggest deadlines and application points, and it covers everything from today in this orientation all the way through the consultations that we'll be doing next spring. So again, a great reference point for what does this A-year benchmarking look like? What's happening at different points in the calendar? What do you need to be worrying about? What are you looking for from JCC Association to be providing? So that's a quick overview. We repeat some of the critical deadlines in this checklist. Although I think the calendar is certainly more comprehensive as a point of reference. And the final slide of the deck is to introduce you to the rest of the benchmarking team. When you send emails to JCC benchmark at jcca.org, those emails are automatically copied to me, but also to 3 colleagues at Collaborative Strategies, Inc., which is a consulting firm in St. Louis that has been working with us on benchmarking, not from day one, but from year two. So for a long, long time. And so they are all supporting you in being successful in this round. If I'm not available, they may be answering your questions when we start validating the tools. Some of you will hear from Brian Hayden or Paul Ellebrecht or Natalie Hilfiger Roberts with questions. So I wanted you to have seen their names before you got those emails and started wondering who the heck is Collaborative Strategies. That's what I had to present. I'm going to stop sharing. I see that there are some things in chat. Let me take a peek at those and ask if there are questions.
It's mostly me, and one of them you've already answered.
Okay, well, I have gotten your first question from a couple people. Our goal is to let you know next week when your user survey dates are. So that's why we're pushing to get all of the preferences in this week, so that by Labor Day week we can say, okay, here's the October 3 JCCs and here's the October 7 JCCs and so on. So we will share that with you as soon as we can. And the other question, which I love only because it gives me a chance to talk about our request for membership structure. We don't need a tremendous amount of detail. At a minimum, we want to know what are the benefits associated with being a member versus being a program participant. So if I'm a member, do I have access to fitness, or is that an add-on? And what about tennis? What about early childhood? Do I have to be a member to be in early childhood? Do I have to be a member to send my kids to camp? That's the most important information. If you had a simple PDF that you could share with us that shows us your categories, that's nice, but not critical, because we're not going to do a lot of work with how you define a young family, or whether one kid is different from 3 kids. But we do understand the overall picture of how your membership is structured.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions? I know I threw a lot at you. I appreciate your patience. It becomes a lot more real once you actually start working through the tools. But if there's anything that's top of mind, I'm glad to try to be helpful.
Andy, when will you update this updated deck to the site?
It's there. It's
there. Oh,
there.
it says 2021 right now.
In the PowerPoint, the PowerPoint slide said 2021.
No, there's one that's called 2023 new JCC.
But when you actually go to OneHub, it's got the 2023 versions on it.
I'm on.
Yes.
Maybe I'm on the wrong page. So I'm on OneHub, but I'm at the forms library with stuff on the side.
So click on orientation materials.
I have 2021 returning JCC benchmarking orientation is what I'm seeing.
But if you scroll down, there was a 2023 new JCC benchmarking part A.
Mine doesn't have that.
Okay.
That's very weird.
I can share so you guys can tell me if I'm wrong.
Sure.
Because I am. Can you allow me to share, Andy, and then you can tell me why I'm missing it?
Okay.
Okay, I am right here. And you can see my screen. This is what I see.
Because you're in surveys. So
no, it says forms library. Oh,
see where it says home right here, right below upload. No, go down. Okay, forms library. Right. Click on forms library.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then below the upload button, see where it says home?
Yes.
Click on home to go up a level. And
Mhm.
now, click on orientation materials.
Sorry. I'm so, okay.
Forms library.
Mm-hmm.
We're back at the home page. And if you click on orientation materials, go ahead.
Okay, great. I see it. Yeah, because I had this little thing over here that just said 21. I didn't go that
Yep.
far, so thank you.
I'm sure that everyone on this call benefited from having seen you do that.
I was like trying to play at it while you were talking, so I knew where things were. So thank you. I appreciate.
And I do see there are a couple people on the screen who I haven't sent credentials to yet. So please let me know. Different JCCs have handled OneHub very differently. In some cases, the benchmarking coordinator does all the uploading and downloading. In other JCCs, they want multiple people to be able to get into OneHub because it's just easier. So just let me know if someone needs that access.
Andy, for us, is the data you're going to send me from 2017 going to go to OneHub, or are you going to email that separately for Denver?
I'm going to email that to you directly.
Thank you.
All right, folks. Well, thank you again so very much. As I said, I'm looking forward to working with you. I don't think I said, but it's one of the things I learned when I started doing this 12 years ago. There are no stupid benchmarking questions. So please don't hesitate at any point. I know you explained it in the orientation, but I just can't find, or I just don't understand what I'm supposed to do on this tab, or the directions aren't clear, or my CFO has raised an issue that I haven't thought about. All those questions are welcome. We'd much rather get the questions up front so that everyone is submitting the data as consistently as possible. So at any point. I won't respond at any point, but email me at any point and I will get back to you as quickly as I can. Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday.
Thank you, Andy.
I wait to hear from you.
Thank you so
Bye-bye,
much.
everyone.